All right, the time has come. My favorite segment is here. I'm putting Reggie on the hot seat, covering all the latest hot topics in Minnesota sports, called What
Okay.
Does It Mean? Reggie, are you ready to go through the gauntlet?
Come on. Come at me, bro.
I'm bringing it today. Here we go. First up, what does it mean? ESPN's newest power rankings names off one player from each team who benefited the most from each draft class. So Kevin Seifert noted for the Vikings, C.J. Ham was the player who most benefited from the front office haul after the team did not address the tight end position until the 7th round. And the fact that Kevin O'Connell could use a lot of two-back sets and motion Ham as a tight end early and often. What does it mean for Ham when trying to glean how the new-look Vikings offense could use their fullback and tight ends in 2022?
You know what's interesting is like Kevin Seifert dug deep into the bag for this one.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I did not
Like,
expect this one when I read
no,
that.
like
What?
out of all people, the player who benefited from the draft the most, you went CJ Ham?
The fullback?
You're like, but then you kind of think about it and you're just like, okay, Kevin might be on to something.
Mm-hmm.
He might be going somewhere with this because CJ Ham has quietly become like one of the Vikings' most productive players since he was drafted in 2016, or went undrafted in 2016. And so I think what's really cool is like whenever you get CJ involved into the offense at any point, he produces. And so I think what Kevin O'Connell saw on film is a guy who can be used maybe more than he was. Like, he's just not a fullback. Like, I've seen them flex him out. I've seen them, put him on wheel routes out of the backfield and he pick up a first down for the team. Like, when you actually give him a chance, like, he can do some things. Now, look, he's 5'10", so, like, I don't see like him being a quote unquote tight end in the a sense of maybe like a Jim Kleinsasser or something like that. But
Great
like,
name drop, by the way. Thank you.
well, but I think he can be productive. If you are gonna implement a two-back set, receiver set, something like that. Just another weapon at Kevin O'Connell's like arsenal to be able to put out there. I think Kevin might be onto something, and I think CJ could be a weapon because he's shown that if given the opportunity, he can produce out there. And so that's not necessarily the first name you think of like, oh, who benefited from the draft the most, but like the dude can play. I mean, he wouldn't have lasted this long if he couldn't. Quietly still only 28 years old as well. Like, he's still got some good football left to be played moving forward. And I'm interested now that Seifert brings it up. I'm interested to see how Kevin O'Connell employs him game after game to kind of be a little bit more a part of the game plan as opposed to just being a lead blocker for Dalvin and Madison.
Well, when Kevin O'Connell was brought in, the first thing Vikings fans did, they pulled out the roster, they took a pen, and they go, okay, who's out? Fullback. Kevin O'Connell don't use fullback. Not in that Rams offense. But you know what good coaches do in today's NFL? They maximize their players' best skill sets. And he knows, like you said, C.J. Ham's a great football player. He's one of the top 3 to 5 fullbacks in the league for a reason, albeit the league doesn't use the fullback position traditionally that much anymore, but the dude is useful and versatile nonetheless. And I love to hear that Seifert kind of pointed and highlighted CJ Ham out because, again, he's good enough to where you can find different ways to utilize him and diminish the lack of depth we talked about yesterday at the tight end position by motioning him and getting creative. You want to get your best 11 guys on the field, period. When you can show and disguise different looks using a fullback, Dalvin Cook's in the backfield. We talked about Alexander Madison as well. They're still going to try to run the ball quite a bit in this offense, no doubt. But using CJ Ham, again, just shows and proves that Kevin O'Connell isn't just coming in, implementing and supplanting his system and making guys adjust to him. No, he's looking at the roster and the talent and adjusting to his players' skill sets. That's what
great.
I love about this. So hopefully Kevin Seifert's onto something. I know Vikings fans would love to see CJ Ham not just make the team, but be a part of this offense and produce like we've seen him the last 4 or 5 years. The local legend, Augustin, right in the backyard.
He's a fan favorite. Yeah.
Next one up, what does it mean? Minnesota Vikings announced they have hired Demetrius Washington as VP of Football Operations. He comes from Cleveland. What does it mean when looking at the Vikings' heavy analytics-driven front office and how it now relates to player personnel? What's your just quick thoughts on bringing him in?
I think it's interesting that Kwesi brought in one of his guys, basically. Yep. You know, they were kind of in the trenches together in San Francisco when Kwesi first kind of made his transition into football. And you know, he brought a guy in that he trusts, and he brought a guy in that, you know, probably has a similar mindset, thinks similarly to him. And so I think they're going all in on analytics, man. Like they're gonna really just like zero in on this. And I think it's really cool for the organization from a front office standpoint is you got another mind in there that, you know, is diverse in thought, and someone who can really just kind of help, you know, as Kwesi continues to transition as a guy being in the general manager role, and he makes these important decisions about the roster and about the overall growth of the football team. He's got another voice in the building that he trusts. You know, it's interesting, you know, like when I came to Care 11, I came as the sports director, you know, a leadership position. And when I came in, there were nobody, you know, on the team that I knew before I got here. And, you know, not to say that you can't work well with your team, but it's always kind of cool, you know, when you come to a situation and you're like, oh, okay, like, I'll work with the team that's assembled, you know, and I think we work well together, which is the case with me at Care 11. But say like I was able to come over and like bring my own producer or bring my own, you know, whoever to come with me, someone that I was comfortable with, someone that I already had a relationship with, someone that I trust. And it just makes that experience that much more better. And so now what we're seeing is that Kwesi has done that. Like, he's already getting along great with the people in the building and they are gelling well. But now he's brought a guy in that he knows, that he trusts, that, you know, he has a great relationship with, that can also kind of be a little bit of a wingman for him, that just kind of makes it all that much more, you know, like together when it comes to making football decisions. And so it's interesting that they did this after the draft. But I mean, anytime you kind of come in after a season, after, you know, a Super Bowl and all that stuff, and you're trying to just piecemeal your way, like this is kind of the result of that. And so you probably see, you know, when we get to around this time next year, that team is really just kind of gelling and moving forward in the direction that Kwesi really wants to go. But right now they're just kind of like getting things together and, you know, kind of filling things out.
As Brad Pitt in Moneyball says, adapt or die. And we know the entire sports landscape has now built their teams and philosophies around analytics. There's no point in dipping your toes in, Kwesi. If you're going to go all in, jump in the deep end, and that's what he's done. He's committed to this analytics landscape and bringing in Demetrius Washington from Cleveland. Love that they have some ties together, like you mentioned. So I think it's a good move for sure. Last one up, what does it mean? The Green Bay Packers made Jair Alexander the highest paid cornerback in the NFL yesterday with a 4-year, $84 million deal, including a $30 million guaranteed signing bonus, a new defensive back record. What does it mean when breaking down the thought process of the Packers to pay Jair Alexander over Devontae Adams, who was traded this offseason? What's your quick takeaways from that move?
All right, did you watch that playoff game that they lost to the 49ers? So that's probably what is driving all of this. Like, the offense, even with Devontae and all those weapons, they hardly did anything in that game.
Nothing.
But what you saw was some terrible mistakes on the special teams. You saw, some mistakes on defense that really allowed the 49ers to take control and to win that football game. And I think if you're talking about trying to get back to the Super Bowl and talking about really just trying to last and not go one and done in the playoffs after being one of the top seeds, which is, embarrassing, I think they go all in on defense. I think what they hope is that Aaron Rodgers and that offense and Matt LaFleur, they'll figure it out and they'll be complementary to the defense. But what we saw in the draft is their first couple picks, defense. They were able to add Christian Watson, to kind of be a weapon for Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers is going to have to bring him along as a rookie, because Rodgers doesn't have all that much time left. And it's like, well, you had an established guy in Devontae Adams, and now you got to learn this rookie up to speed. And now, that's going to be an interesting thing when you talk about how this offseason progresses. But I think, the old adage still reigns true, man. Defense wins championships. And I think, them paying Jair, first of all, paying Jair was a no-brainer. He had some injuries, and so you hope that he continues to just stay healthy moving forward. But you're talking about one of the top corners in the game. So it's kind of like a no-brainer to pay that guy, right? You spent a first-round pick on him back, a few years ago. So it's just like you're investing in one of your guys. So it makes sense. But at the end of the day, like I said, defense wins championships. And so as brilliant as that offense was last year, bounced. They got packed up and they went home. Jimmy Garoppolo saying, F the Packers at the end of that game. Like, embarrassing. Like, dang, the disrespect. They're hoping that something like that doesn't happen again when you go all in on defense your first two picks and you pay Jair Alexander. Like, you're going hard on the defense, and you're gonna go by that to try to get you to the promised land.
This ain't the MLB, man. You can't keep everybody. There's a salary cap for a reason, right? And so you got to pick and choose. You got to get creative. And they chose defense over Devontae Adams. And I think the philosophy kind of rings true here after they draft not one but two defensive players, Quay Walker, the linebacker from Georgia, the defensive tackle from Georgia, Devontae Wyatt in the first round, say, hey, we got Aaron Rodgers. But that doesn't mean we need to go get him help because we have Aaron Rodgers. He's going to make everybody around him better. He's going to elevate their game plan. It's like when Mike Zimmer was here in Minnesota and he kept using early picks on defense and cornerbacks specifically. It's like, wait a minute. I thought you were the DB guru. I thought you were the cornerback guru. Why can't we wait later on and draft cornerbacks later and let you do your thing and help out the other side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball with those early round picks? So definitely a philosophy in place in Green Bay. Interesting to see how it's going to all play out. Jair, though, finally gets paid. Well-deserved. He's making more than Jalen Ramsey and Denzel Ward, the previous top two cornerbacks in the NFL.